Welcome to the podcast about investing in startups, where existing investors can learn how to get the best deal possible, and those that have never before invested in startups can learn the keys to success from the venture experts. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome back to TFR for a special installment of Investor Stories. In this segment, the investors tell a story about some of the most odd and unusual situations they've ever encountered as investors. This is the segment called The Strange and Unusual. On today's special segment, we have Lindel Eakman of Foundry Group next. Lindel, can you tell us a story about one of the strangest or most unusual pitches you've encountered during your time as an LP?
So I'm going to use an experience I had, not a direct pitch, but an experience. I was in India in 2007, probably 2008, bull market. Had agreed to do a panel in India late in the day at a fairly large conference. I and three other LPs. Like I said, last panel late in the day, pretty big conference. We wanted to raise our profile at Utemco, but wow, holy wow. I mean, the group of LPs, as we came off the stage, were just besieged by a crowd of people just literally poking business cards at us and blocking any exit. At that point, I mean, literally, there's just a crowd. I mean, you almost needed security, it felt like. I turned to my friend Ken Schimberg. He was at Brown University then, and said, "Follow me." And it literally felt like I was lead blocking my way out of there to get to the stairwell and out. And so I thought we were clear. I had made it to my room in the adjacent hotel. But to their, I guess, credit or discredit, aggressiveness, certainly, my room telephone started ringing. So I had to unplug it. And there were a few knocks at my door of my hotel room. But I didn't answer it. So that is probably the extreme of aggressiveness. That maybe GPs shouldn't follow that act.
You got to appreciate a little hustle, but that's way too much.
That was strange.
On today's special segment, we have Chris Duovos of VIA. Chris, can you tell us a story about one of the craziest situations and or pitches you've encountered?
I'll tell a flip story, but then I'll tell a more in-depth one that actually has a lesson to it. One of the craziest pitches I've ever had was I met this group for the first time. They were pretty credible. They're totally investable. I think they've gone on to raise, money from credible investors and have had some investing success. But literally, as we're parting ways, they said, what feedback do you have for us? And I said, let me digest a little bit. I need to think about kind of where you guys might fit. And the guy said to me, one of the GPs, he goes, well, what's it going to take? Hookers? Blow? Will that make the difference? I was so appalled. And I'm like, is he joking? Because he looked serious. But I'm like, maybe he's trying to deadpan. But then I'm like, dude, we've known each other for just north of an hour. That's not a joke. I was like,
wow,
so
that's
appalled by it.
Aggressive.
A public service announcement for all the VCs out there, hookers and blow will not make the average LP, kind of open up their wallet.
Lindel Eakman had a very similar story, very similar to this.
I wonder if it's the same manager. I got to call him up and find out. So the other one is actually, there's a meta lesson here. And the meta lesson is, I think everybody today is obsessed with differentiation. And I think people have gotten the message that the market's crowded, so you have to be different. But different for the sake of being different sometimes is just weird, right? And what I mean when I say differentiation is, what is your durable competitive advantage, right? I might actually see a manager that is the same as the manager I just met with, but has a much more, robust, competitive moat. And that is differentiated, even though they have this, similar strategies. And the thing that, I sat down with somebody recently, and I write a lot, I tweet a lot, and this person clearly read some of the stuff, and he sat down with me and he said, I'm really differentiated. And I go, okay, tell me about your strategy. He goes, okay, well, dorm room fund? I'm like, yeah. He's like, the dorm room fund finds these, kids at colleges and what have you, and there's a lot of energy. He goes, here's my vision. He goes, in a lot of startups, the biggest cost is founder salaries, which actually I've not found to be uniformly true. So what if we found people who don't need big salaries because they're living at home like high school students? So we're going to do a dorm room fund for high schools.
Oh, no.
He's like, that's differentiated, isn't it? I'm like, no, that's just crazy. And so, that's a weird recent pitch and, kind of brings up this bigger and important lesson.
You could fund people that are working at large corporations, but how are they going to build the startup if they're doing another job?
Well, right? Exactly. Your side hustle. Your side hustle is a startup.
Yeah. On today's special segment, we have Semil Shah. Semil, can you tell us a story about the craziest situation you've been in or craziest pitch you've ever received?
Yeah, I would say there was one situation which really informed my thinking, so I was thankful of it, where there was this LP and they were interested, and they weren't as sophisticated in terms of venture. They were sophisticated investors, but just not in venture. And they kind of asked this question that just surprised me, which was like, hey, how do I model out a return for this? And I just thought, like, I kind of snapped back in my chair and I was like, you can't model out a return. And they were like, well, no, I need to get, this X. And I was like, well, we can make up a model where you get it, but like, you can't really model it. And he was like, well, why not? He's like, you should be able to model everything. And I'm like, yeah, in Excel you can, but really the work that we do here is that if you are going to invest in a VC fund, whether you're investing in Benchmark or you're investing in Homebrew or you're investing in any fund, what you're essentially doing as an LP is you're sort of saying and looking at those protagonists, those managers, and you're saying, I trust this group of managers to allocate some of my money to, let's say, 30 groups of founding teams, right?
Yep.
Now, the decision they make on where to allocate it and when, I'm wholly entrusting to them. And as we know in like venture portfolios, like 1, 2, or 3 of those 30 founding teams end up subsidizing the rest, right?
Yep.
If you're
Power
lucky
law.
to have a
Yep.
return. Power law. So really as the LP, it's not about modeling a return. It's like looking at the manager and saying, do I trust you to allocate money to people who are worthy of having it? Because like 90% of the time, maybe a little bit less, it's not going to work out. And so really the network of founders in that portfolio are subsidizing each other.
That's the industry.
Right. And when you think about it that way, the selection really moves from modeling a return to thinking about, do I trust this person to allocate money to the right people?
Did you tell him that? Was that your response?
I did. And then I used that logic on a lot of people who brought it up. But I just remember that particular meeting where, he was coming at it from top down, which is sort of the world he lives in. And I was really thinking about it bottoms up, like what actually happens on the ground.
I feel like I've gotten similar questions, not at the fund level, but like, how do you value a startup at this stage? Or what do you think the outcome will be for this particular startup? And I'm sort of at a loss with some of those questions because, I can talk about how we value companies, but a lot of this is art, and you can't really predict the size of the outcomes. You're just betting on the best teams in the biggest potential markets and letting that exceptional team drive the outcome.
I kind of said the same thing. What I told people is when I make the investment, I know why I'm making it in that moment of time. But everything after, it's hard to predict a year later, why did you make that investment? So I think in the moment that you're making it, you should have clarity around it. It's just hard to know where things are going to happen. And I think Bryce Roberts had a great tweet about this where he kind of said, like, not all good investments are good businesses and not all good businesses are good investments, right? Now, I also haven't had enough experience to know or even observe, what the time cycle is. Like, is it 5 to 7 years? Is it 7 to 10 years of when you get liquid? So I have no idea myself. Right. And entrepreneur, Fred Wilson had a great interview at Upfront Summit a few years ago where he just said, VCs cannot control when you have a liquidity opportunity. So you just don't have control over that. You don't know when a company could sell. You don't know for how much. It's pretty random. It's more random than people want to think. And I think partially in the process, they want to put some structure around it so that when they sell it to the group or the committee, there's at least a record of saying, okay, here's what we're planning, here's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it sort of takes an LP that can appreciate this asset class for what it is, which is different than many others.
Yep, absolutely.
That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.